Right. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Yolo Transit District meeting for July 13th. It is a regular meeting, and we will start with a roll call. City of Winters, here. County of Yolo,
Here.
City of Woodland, here. City of Davis,
Here. Here.
Items that are on this consent calendar or not on our regular agenda.
Stewart. I'm aware of the content on agenda item 5. I'll say later. Meeting minutes on report. Positions clear. Soon in order to minimize service disruptions. I'm interested in increasing rates of regular ridership. The local president, Kristen McGee, was not able to attend this meeting because she's currently in the road trying to hire her own, but hopefully 256 chairwoman. And really for
Thank you so much for your comments. Again, this is for items on the agenda or on consent. Do you have any other public comments online or in person? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for approval of tonight's agenda, but I'd like to move item 6 to 5 and 5 to 6 as it has been requested of me. So with that, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda with that change? We have a motion in a second, and we'll do a roll call, please. City of Winters. County of Yolo. Aye. City of Woodland. Aye. City of Davis. City of Davis.
Hello.
Your mic's closer. Director Chapman, can you hear my voice? Director Chapman, can you, if you can give me a thumbs up? Please. It's pretty. Can you hear me now? You can pull it forward. Yeah. Can you hear me now, Josh? We're gonna just.
We can barely. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you now. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Yeah. I know Kimberly and Julia as well didn't hear anything that happened starting out. So I'm not quite sure if you're hearing what we're saying on this end or not.
Hear that, but they can't hear us, I think.
We were asking for a roll call vote to approve tonight's agenda and flipping the item order for items 5 and 6. And we had a motion and a second, and we were doing roll call vote, and we just got to Davis.
Okay, perfect. Can I, right before I vote, I just need to just make one statement that I'm being involved in the meeting remotely for just cause reasons for caregiving of a family member. And there's nobody under 18 in the room with me. And with that, I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously with us. So the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. There are several items on the consent calendar. I guess I'd be looking for a motion unless you want to introduce the consent calendar.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. But
My apologies. I just want to make sure, since Kimberly's not here, I'm going to step in and make sure she can hear everything. Kimberly, can you hear us as well? Okay, we can't hear you, but you can hear us.
I see you, but.
Wait, yeah, I can't hear Kimberly. We can't hear you, Kimberly.
we still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, here you go. Hi.
New speakers. Hi.
All right. So everybody can hear? You guys can hear? All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
A lot
Thank
better.
you. So I was introducing the consent calendar. There's several items on the consent calendar not considered anything that requires discussion. So I would be asking for a motion to move the consent calendar.
So moved, Chair.
All right, we have a motion by
Second.
Director Vega and a second by Director Frericks, Vice Chair Frericks. Roll call vote, please.
City of Winters,
Aye.
County of Yolo,
Aye.
City of West Sacramento,
Aye.
City of Woodland,
Aye.
and City of Davis.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, our consent calendar passes. I just wanted to mention that Director Dr. Early is here for the rest of the vote. And now we're moving on to our regular calendar. We'll be starting with item 6. Item 6 is a public hearing, and staff is asking us to approve the resolution 2026-14, adopting the final annual budget and work plan for 2026-27.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is going to be a tag team with Chaz and Brian and myself. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with some opening comments. The action before you tonight is to approve the final budget and work plan for fiscal year 26-27. We're really grateful for all the feedback and dialogue these past few months. We know there's a fiscal cliff coming and it's not far off. We're in a unique position this year due to the SB 125 funding, which is really the last gasp of the COVID era subsidies. And much of your feedback over the last few months has been to make sure we're doing everything we can do now to prepare for the inevitability of a budget deficit. We heard you. We went back, we made additional cuts where we could. And we also fine-tuned our approach to how do we use the next year to really get our arms around the coming deficit and what are the best strategies for addressing it. So our staff recommendation is to hold a public hearing and then approve a resolution to adopt the final annual budget and work plan, replacing the preliminary budget that you approved in June. So in a moment, I'm going to hand off the mic to Brian, but before I do, I just want to acknowledge that Leo Torres with SACOG is here with us on Zoom. In case there are any questions about SB 125 or anything else within SACOG's purview, he generously offered to be here tonight. So Janine, if you can promote him as a panelist, that would be great. And then I want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge the person sitting to my left, Brian, for taking on the role of acting executive director during a very poorly timed month-long absence for me. His willingness to step up and serve in a role that he frequently reminds me he has absolutely no desire ever to do allowed me to take time to deal with an important and difficult family matter, and I'm very grateful, Brian. So thank you. And now that I have embarrassed him, I am going to have him take it away.
Thanks. Thanks, Autumn. Appreciate it. So when facing challenging fiscal circumstances, which we are, it's important to reflect on the services that we offer and the communities that we serve for full awareness of the trade-offs made with budget decisions that we're looking at and a mindfulness of uses that are being prioritized with the funding available for public transportation. Next slide, please. Let's zoom out for a few slides to review YoloTD's role in the county's transportation system. Next, yeah, 2 more slides, I think. Right? So as providers, we know that public transportation services that we provide are a core societal foundation. They're as important as housing, as important as healthcare, as important as being able to support oneself in the economy and through education. And we serve a wide spectrum of society, from low-income, housing insecure folks to high-income commuters who are trying to, reach their work in downtown Sacramento. And we connect people to their basic everyday needs. And that mobility that we provide them enables everybody to fully participate in society and gives them access to opportunities to better improve their lives. And it's not easy for a lot of households in Yolo County. Almost 40% of households have access to 1 car or less, and 1 out of every 12 households doesn't have access to a car at all. So reductions in transportation services and disinvestment in transit will have a destabilizing effect on communities with the least means to adapt. And so when we see reductions or cuts in the transportation system or in the services that we provide, those costs may show up elsewhere on the stools of that, on the legs of that stool. Next slide, please. So Yolo Transportation District has a role that extends beyond just the transportation services that we offer. In 1996, we transitioned from a strictly a transit agency to a transportation district, which expanded our role to include being the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and also the Congestion Management Agency. And the bullet list on this slide shows our core functions as the Countywide Transportation Planning Agency, and also our role to advocate and act in Yolo County's transportation interests with respect to funding, projects, and priorities. Furthermore, public and multimodal transportation are heavily featured in each of our member agencies' climate action plan goals. Next slide, please. So with sort of the table set for what our role is in the countywide transportation system, that kind of brings us to, sort of internally facing visions and priorities, which the board adopted or updated in 2022. And that forms the foundation for our work plan and our budget. So what you see here, the vision and priorities represent a shift in mindset for Yolo Transportation District to more assertively assume the responsibilities codified in our founding legislation. And that's what we've been doing since 2022. We've initiated projects and prioritized staff resources towards a more sustainable multimodal transportation system. And that continues with the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget. Next slide, please. Yet, as Autumn alluded, we know that financial challenges are looming. Our main June board meetings resulted in direction to further reduce, defer, or eliminate discretionary expenses, and also to prepare for future funding deficits. Next slide, please. All right, and diving in more deeply, at the June meeting, the board raised specific questions that could have affected the proposed budget. So we followed up on these questions, and here we focus on 3 of those. Chaz will elaborate in a little more detail on some of the other topics that were raised. So, for example, one of the questions that was asked by board members was whether or not we could reduce service this fiscal year in 26-27 without jeopardizing our SB 125 funding. So if you recall, the SB 125 funding that we received was programmed to essentially backfill cuts that we would have had to have made in this fiscal year. So in conversations with SACOG staff, they confirmed that if we reduced any service in this fiscal year, that SB 125 funding that was used essentially to provide funding for those services would be reprogrammed to other transit agencies in the region. So there isn't really a financial incentive or benefit for us to reduce any services this year. Second question was, what we can do this year to prepare for future year deficits. So we've been working diligently in 25, 26, and even as far back as 24, 25, knowing that this was coming. And we, in anticipation of this, we had included these lower percentages of service in our short-range transit plan. So we can assume that the 80% financial scenario in the short-range transit plan is sort of the reality that we'll be facing in our in the next fiscal year. We've also budgeted for consulting assistance for organizational efficiency assessment per board's direction at the last meeting. And finally, we'll be bringing back in the fall some opportunities for increasing revenues. Board had suggested looking into what increasing fare revenues could do. We're also going to be presenting on sort of what a sales tax revenue measure could do to help sort of restore some of the service cuts that we'll be looking at in the near future. And then finally, question was asked or suggested that we leverage SACOG resources to help address the fiscal cliff. And this came from the May SACOG board meeting where Leo and his team presented to the SACOG board on the SB 125 financial recovery plan. And the SACOG board approved recommendations that included SACOG coordinating and working with both YoloTD and Sacramento Regional Transit, because we're both facing the largest deficits coming up, to work with us on addressing those issues. So we followed up with SACOG staff in late June, had a really good conversation with them, and there's mutual interest in continuing to collaborate on this issue. The next step would really be for us to kind of figure out how that interfaces with the organizational efficiency assessment and making sure that both SACOG, the consultant, and staff are sort of, aligned in purpose. And I think with that budget context set, now I hand the slides over to Chaz for the proposed budget.
Okay, good evening, board, staff. Thank you for being here once again, talking about our fiscal year 26-27 budget. We received your feedback from the May and the June meeting. Today we are bringing forward the cost reductions to the budget that we determined were appropriate and that could be implemented without having as much long-term effects. So I'm going to go over a few slides that we presented to you in June, sharing some of the potential areas where we considered reducing some of our costs. The first slide, next slide, please. This was presented to the board in June, highlighting some of the information that we did not cover as in-depth in the May meeting. We did cover some of the increases in May, but we didn't really highlight the reductions that were already implemented into the preliminary budget. This again is the slide that you saw in June, where we had already implemented $883,000 in budget reductions, including the elimination of one full-time equivalent position. Next slide. Also in June, this was our list of preliminary areas where we thought we would look and do a deeper dive into what we could actually do here. Most of these costs we were looking at were more in the discretionary areas that represent about 8% of our total operating budget. We were lucky at the time where we received our CalTIP risk insurance update, where the valuation came back showing that the premium for this year going forward was significantly less than we had originally projected. So this list that we brought in June is a mix of some potential discretionary cost areas where we're looking into, along with some fixed cost areas, mainly the insurance, where we could make those adjustments, that totaling $1.1 million. Next slide, Janine. At that same meeting, we also presented this table showing pretty much the detail of how much of our operating budget is made of fixed costs versus discretionary costs. On the left side, you see in the blue column where we identified, these cost areas as, fixed components. And then on the right side, the discretionary costs. After further review, we determined that it was probably more appropriate for us to move the cost of living adjustment to the discretionary cost column, as it is still subject to board approval. Next slide. This is also a slide that we presented, just addressing some of the impacts of reducing costs for the 26-27, as we talked about a lot, and what Brian touched on is 92% of our operating budget is fixed. With the utilization of SB 125, that prevents us from making any transit service cuts this year. The areas where we could cut any costs were more in the discretionary areas, which represent, a small amount of our operating budget. And then for any capital or planning related projects that are tied to any federal or local grants, that wasn't an area to cut either, because that would be forfeiting that award. And then for the forward years, 27, 28, and forward, the fixed cost areas are a place where we would consider those reductions by way of, the short range transportation plan and some of those transit service reduction scenarios that are folded in that. And then of course, the discretionary costs, we can continue to evaluate some of those cost areas, but again, it represents a small percentage of our operating budget. And the same with the capital projects tied to federal and local grants. To reduce those, we would be forfeiting awards that we received. And then on the revenue side, addressing those funding deficits, same thing for 26-27. With some of the cost reductions that I'll present in a few slides, we were able to preserve the historical LTF amounts that the jurisdiction has retained over the years. This required us to make some adjustments on the revenue side. When we had the discussion in June, we were just proposing potential areas of cost reductions. We didn't quite have at the time how the revenues would shift. And then we received direction from the board that we would evaluate LTF funding and that we would do our best to restore those historical percentages. And then doing that, it required us to utilize more of, we had earmarked a little bit of the SB 125 money for some unanticipated costs that may arise out of the new transit contract. So we did utilize a little more of that to balance out our funding with the cost reduction implementations. And then no FTA formula funds were impacted, those stayed intact. And then for the 27-28 years and forward, again, fixed costs are an area where we will be evaluating by ways of possibly implementing service reductions. And then any unprogrammed FTA formula funds, as you know, we've accumulated over the years, that will be a little more accelerated in the way that we use those. And also highlighted at the time that reducing services will negatively impact future FTA funding, as part of that formula is tied to the number of hours and miles that we run. And then as a consequence, reduced FTA formula funds will increase more reliance on LTF funds. And then one more to highlight is that reduction in transit service, if we were to reduce our services by 90%, it's not a direct proportion, to the amount that we would be saving. So a 10% reduction in service would not translate to a 10% reduction in cost. Next slide, please. All right. Actual reductions included in this revised preliminary budget. So we did do our work in evaluating where we could realistically make some of these cost reductions. We kept some of the reductions that we initially shared at the June meeting. They're all listed here. I won't go through all of them. We also provided a little more detail in the staff report as far as what the, some of the impacts were. In total, we were able to reduce the preliminary budget and revise it by $736,869. And that was a mix, again, of discretionary costs and fixed costs, mainly for the insurance premium adjustments. Actual cost reduction impacts are here and summarized: lowering operating costs through the reduced insurance premiums, reducing training and development for staff may slow our training, procurement updates, product development, and long-term planning efforts. Reducing marketing and communications may lower public awareness of transit services and delay website improvements, while updated Yolo bus maps improve rider information. Removal of unfunded planning projects reduce data and analysis available for future transportation, planning and funding opportunities. And then higher transit operating costs reflect updated estimated service hours. We had to make a little bit of an adjustment on the hours and miles that we project on microtransit. Next slide, please. So overall, our actual operating capital cost reduction in this revision includes that $736,000 in operating budget, as well as there was a Caltrans grant that we applied for this planning project. We were unsuccessful, so that automatically reduced the capital budget by $390,000. In addition to the local match LTF funds of $57,000 already incorporated into those reductions. Next slide. So revisions after the operating cost reductions. This is just a summary showing what we did, what we initially had budgeted, and then the actual reductions that were made to this revision. And then the net effect, which is it changed the fixed and discretionary proportions just by like a smidgen of a percent. So it still looks like 92.88. Next slide, please. Local transportation funds, LTF, change in the jurisdictions retained shares as a result of cost reductions. So the first slide here, next slide, please. The first slide here is something that we hadn't shared in the last meeting. I went back and just did a 10-year look back on what the total LTF allocations have been for the past 10 years overall, and then the amount that has been retained by our jurisdictions. Overall, the average retained by our jurisdictions over the past 10 years is about 55%. Where YoloTD retains about 45% of our LTF funding for operating expenses only. This is in your staff report. It's just a little bit more detail. That purple table right there shows what the allocation of LTF was for 25-26 as compared to the total allocation for 26-27. The difference, as you can see, we're receiving a reduced amount of $830,000 this year. And then you drop below to the green table, the member jurisdictions retention amount compared to 25-26. So you see that proportionate decrease with the total LTF allocation versus the total amount retained by the jurisdictions is 5.3%. Next slide. So with the cost reductions that we did implement in this revision that we're proposing for adoption tonight, as far as the local transportation funds allocation retained by the jurisdictions, none of the jurisdictions had a change. It was restored to the percentage received last year and consistent with the percentages received in the prior years. Next slide. And then on our 5-year financial outlook, I'll go over those things. Thank you. So we're going to need to do a little more work on the 5-year outlook as far as the future years. Today, our purpose is to get this 26-27 budget across the board and continue to do the work that we need to do internally, to evaluate what our future years will look like. Brian touched a little bit on some of the different scenarios that we're considering, and then also looking into additional funding sources in the future. But for now, the expenses, if you compare it to the original preliminary 5-year outlook that was provided to the board, the changes that were made here was the update to the operating budget, which was a reduction in the 736,000. We also adjusted the revenues for the additional amount that are going to be retained by the jurisdictions, in addition to the additional amount that we are using in the SB 125 funds. All the other assumptions in the 5-year outlook for 26-27 and years forward assume that the same inflators that we had in the preliminary budget presented to you in May, with nothing else changed on the funding either. Next slide. On the revenue side, as I mentioned, we had mentioned earlier, we don't anticipate to have any new funding sources, any new one-time funding sources. This is our year where we're seeing, pretty much SB 125 is it. LTF revenues in this 5-year outlook, as I mentioned, are allocated based on historical percentages. So the current 5-year outlook includes that the jurisdictions retain that historical amount, so no other changes were made there. And then leveraging the FTA formula funds from previous years that were not programmed or are unspent to stabilize our future operating budgets. Those will be accelerated, of course. And then adding utilization of the 5307 UZA SAC discretionary funds that we recently received allocations for the fiscal year 24-25. This slide is just a snapshot. It's a very condensed version of the 5-year outlook. This full document is in the budget book. This right here below in yellow just shows, the difference in the original 5-year outlook that we presented and the changes that were made there. And then future 5-year financial outlook updates, of course, evaluating funding capacity and any new funding opportunities, finalize the short-range transportation plan and implement any viable recommendations, assess potential service adjustments and address projected deficits with that, evaluate our fare structure in consideration for future fare increases. And then as we learn, as we, do our analysis and make those determinations along the way, provide any updates about 5-year outlook assumptions that we plan to make. And then continue evaluating administrative and operational efficiencies, hiring a financial stability consultant as directed by the board, and then implementing a cost-saving measures while maintaining, of course, a safe, reliable service. And that's it.
Actually, we're going to talk about the work plan next. So if we can go to the next slide. So we're going to very quickly just touch on some of the work plan highlights before we move into Q&A and a discussion. So in the budget document, it does include highlights from the work plan, so I will not go through what's there. For these first 2 pages of continuing priorities, these are projects you're very familiar with. So I won't say much about them, but I'm happy to answer any questions and we refer folks to what's in the book there. So those are our continuing priorities. I do want to go to the next slide and just say a few words about our new initiatives that we have for this year. I'm highlighting just 3 of them. The first is the countywide transportation improvement plan. There has been some conversation about this at the most recent board meetings, but it is a roadmap that identifies the most important transportation projects and priorities for the coming years based on the community's needs across all modes: roads, bridges, bike trails, transit, etc. It helps local governments coordinate investments and compete for state and federal funding and ensure there are limited tax dollars that we have for the transportation system. are spent most effectively and efficiently. We also have procurement of a new integrated transit technology platform. This is not a new thing. What it is we're replacing the kind of hodgepodge of different software apps and platforms that we use for Beeline, Fixed Route, and Paratransit. It's going to be into one single unified platform that is much easier for us on the back end and for the user on the front end. It's particularly going to be a game changer for paratransit, enabling app-based booking for the first time. The third priority I want to highlight is related to its paratransit improvements. We want to improve the rider experience. A big part of that will be the technology, improving the technology for both the rider and our ability to monitor what's happening in the system. We also want to update our eligibility verification procedures and update our service zones to align with the route changes in the short range transit plan. We expect this to be a multi-year project, but we're going to be digging into it this year. That's it on the work plan. I promised I would keep it brief. And with that, I want to go to the next slide, which is back to our staff recommendation. So Madam Chair, our recommendation is to hold a public hearing on the proposed annual budget and work plan, and then to approve resolution 2026-14, approving the revised budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentations. Thank you for the intense staff work, and I really appreciate the ground truthing of centering us on what our goals are and what we're actually, trying to accomplish. I really appreciate all that work. Do we have questions before having a public hearing or comments? Oh, Dr. Wait, and Josh, or Dr. Chapman, any questions before opening the public hearing?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to open the public hearing at 6:38, July 13th, on our budget discussion, and hold the public hearing on the budget and the work plan. So with that, I'm open to accepting comments from online or in the room. Come on up, Mr. Barnwell.
Good evening, Michael Barnbaum for the record, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, and Sacramento State University. This is a very comprehensive and difficult item. First of all, I want to say on behalf of everyone at Sacramento State University, and in the words of head coach Alonzo Carter, as we are now an FBS program, big stingers up to Chas, Rodrigo, and the work you put a lot of hours, effort, time, and a lot of focus into this, and it's not something a lot of people can do. So thank you so much for this. I am comfortable if I were in the position of making a motion to adopt the staff recommendation without any service cuts and without any service expansion. As we do have someone online from Sacramento Area Council of Governments that is an expert in California State Senate Bill 125, can repeat, and it's been in the presentation. I would be afraid to have any other jurisdiction tonight use any of these funds. So on that note, I think that adopting this budget, pausing any service changes for this fiscal year would be the best practice and move tonight because of SB 125. But when we get into item 7 and look ahead to FY 27-28 and beyond, we can have a healthy discussion about how we move forward with that fiscal year and beyond. So Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, that is my motion this evening before you again, to adopt the recommendation and freezing any service changes until Sunday, July 4th, 2027. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Do we have other members of the public in the audience that would like to come up and make comments during the public hearing? Do we have comments online? And I am also inviting Leo Torres if there's anything that you would like to add.
Hi, thank you, Chair Lauren, appreciate it. I have nothing to add. I just want to kind of second Brian's comments earlier in the meeting regarding the use of Senate Bill 125, and if the district were to choose to reduce services, right, the purpose of those funds is to sustain existing service levels. So we would just need to understand what the new need would be if service levels were to change. And the rest of the funds would then kind of go back to having a regional conversation across this ACOG four-county transit operators to understand where those funds could be best used. So yeah, just wanted to second Brian's comments on that. Thanks again.
Thank you so very much, Leo. Seeing no other public comments, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:42. That was late. Bring the discussion to the directors. Okay, Director Earl is back. My head only goes this way, so.
Thank you, Chair Lauren. So I gave, I would say, a lofty request in regards to digging deep into our budget, and I know it wasn't easy. I echo the public comment we heard regarding having to, in a very, very short amount of time, make some of those evaluations and assessments in order to come back and be able to restore those dollars as much as possible to our various jurisdictions. And so commend you for your hard work, because again, as someone who lives in budgets, I know that was not easy. Real talk. So thank you for doing that. I know that we have a fiscal cliff that is very fast approaching. I am interested in making sure that the consultant that I know I certainly have requested, I won't speak on behalf of my colleagues, that we are able to help inform what that might look like, so that we are all on the same page of also the product, right, that we will get, because I think there will at this point only be one time to get it right, because we're so close to what this fiscal cliff will be. So that's what I would say, and would happily, when we're ready, provide a motion to approve.
Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Parks.
A couple quick things. Thanks so much for the work as well to everybody in the last couple of months. And I appreciate, totally personally recognize that, the lion's share of the budget items are obviously in the fixed sort of side of the bucket, or that bucket particularly. And that's, and then the discretionary items are obviously a much smaller overall amount and percentage compared to the overall budget. But I think that it's really important for us to sort of be taking a look at the entirety. And so, I think there were a few items previously in some of our discussions that we were seeing, that just, I think everybody is looking very and digging deep right now, and across all our public agencies, private agencies too, private organizations. And so I think it's so essential that we do the same. And so obviously, thank you, staff, for the work on this, and sort of come back with a bunch of these proposed changes and sort of really kind of just, further refine sort of what is needed and what is not necessarily, what's needed versus what's nice to have in the years ahead. And so I know we're going to be really looking at, like, potentially later this evening, but also obviously on a longer term, the fixed routes and the sort of service maps and such, and service, the actual transit service we provide, we're going to be really taking into those items. But I think that in terms of this year's budget, totally supportive of the direction it's headed. I do have a couple quick questions. So one of the, it's on the slide 14, which is it's the potential cost reduction shared with the board in June, versus the I think it's slide 18, which is just the actual cost reductions included in the revised preliminary budget. So, and I just would, one, probably 2 or 3 questions there. One question for Chaz in particular, just the insurance estimates that we talked about, you've already highlighted those, so I just am, I apologize. Are we going to likely see those? I see them as revised for 26, 27 and much lower than but I don't necessarily see them. Why would they not be included in the actual cost reductions included in the revised budget? I'm not seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, so those are actual premium adjustments.
okay,
So what we originally had budgeted in the
Yeah.
preliminary in May,
Yeah.
that included the information that we had at the time based on our current premiums. And then their annual report was issued after we developed the budget, and those adjustments reflect what the premium will be for this coming year.
okay. I believe they're just included in the fixed cost side of the equation, so.
Yeah.
So that's why they're just not reflected in the actual cost reductions that are on the slide 18, which is, or page 18, those are just all in the discretionary. So,
If I may, they are on slide 18.
all right,
They're kind of scattered. They're not all together.
okay. Hold on, yeah,
So there's line 5, line 10. and line
okay, yeah,
10.
thank you, well, great, that's the question. I mean, another item that I have is also just, and then the second item was just around the marketing and comms item, right? So on the first slide, marketing and comms just kind of lumped together into 85,000. And then in the second slide, it's broken down to 3 sort of separate buckets or line items. And so just was kind of curious about that with the premiums. Thank you, really appreciate that.
Sure.
I guess the other question I have is that then the proposed reductions that you shared on June 8th were about 1.2 million. And the dollar amount that we got to for the purposes of this budget, I mean, the proposed budget to be adopted tonight is a little less than $750,000. I mean, what is the rationale for not including some of these other potential cost reductions in tonight's adoption of tonight's budget?
Well, I think for the most part, when we presented it, it was just potential areas. That's why you're seeing a lot more detail in this one and some of the costs broken out. But there were, we went through it with fine tooth comb and evaluating what impacts will we have in this year that, we have other things that are pending and reducing budget line items in those areas wouldn't have worked, at least not in this year. They weren't reasonable to cut. One of the more significant items that makes this cost reduction look less than what was originally presented to you guys was we had a change in estimate in microtransit. And so you see that addition is actually an addition and not a reduction of 168,000. So if you were to add that back to the reduction, you're looking more around like $900,000.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
We really would appreciate your questions. I couldn't get my words out. Director Wilson? I see Director Chapman has his hand up on that.
Thank you, Chair Lauren. Just a quick follow-up to Director Frericks' question. I had the same around the insurance piece. So how variable are those rates? Or have those changed that drastically from year to year? Or is that something that we should be anticipating, like that level of those rates for next year's budget? Or like what historically has happened around those? Because that makes up $750,000 basically, right? When you add those 3 together. So I was just curious on what we've seen historically with those rates and what we can possibly expect. I know in the city of Davis and other jurisdictions, our rates have gone through the roof regarding insurance. So I'm just curious to get a little bit more information on that.
Right.
Yeah, so in general, we're seeing that too across all of our different insurance providers and premiums. But for the most part, I'm not really well versed on the CalTIP insurance pool, but it is a pool where you have members as a part of it, and each year, you have the experiences that you have in different claims, and you're in a specific share of that proportion of the pool. So at the end, there's a true up or an actuarial valuation that happens based on the experience, in the past year, in addition to any assumptions as compared to, how the portfolio or the pool would perform. And if it underperformed, obviously that would affect the future premiums and what's available or not available. We've had some prior years where the pool did a little better in as far as like the actual interest. And so we've seen even a refund come back to us. So it is a little difficult for us to measure because we're not the only members in that pool, and it's not just based on our vehicles in there. I think the one thing that probably remains a little more consistent as far as some components of our premium is the actual miles that we drive and that we estimate, with our transit service levels. But for the most part, it's it wouldn't be something I would dare to predict for the next year because there's a lot of members in there.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And I will just echo my colleague statements around the appreciation and thanks to our staff. This is our third bite at the apple and on top of our other budget workshops and things that we've done. So thank you all for your hard work on this and getting it to us here this evening.
Thank you, Director Chapman. Director Vega.
Thank you. Echo around the effort and the time and all the education and time spent during these sessions and also the one-on-ones. I really appreciate seeing the effort and the time that was spent in engaging the TAC. I know it was pretty short order to get that scheduled. I also appreciate the questions that they asked and having them included in the packet. I also want to share my support in this board coming up with a way to have us be included in providing the direction for the consultant so that we know what we're expecting, right? So it would be having this board involved and also figuring out a way to have also some of our staff from our member jurisdictions, those who may want to be involved and participate in that. I think we're all in it together. We are all in it together and we're all trying to balance what's going on here, this agency and in our jurisdiction. And so I think to be inclusive in terms of input, but not so much where, we can't get something done and give the consultant on their way to give us the information and the work product that we need.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I have said thank you, but thank you so much for your work. But I wanted to just mention one thing. In the packet, in the slides, page 19, the reduced marketing and communications that may lower public awareness of transit. I am just worried or slightly concerned and hoping that we keep an eye on that because when we make changes, the public needs to know. And when they don't know, they might fill in a blank inaccurately. And that can hurt us in the long run. So just want to, kind of flag that is a very deep cut, and let's keep an eye on that one. Just for the good of the public and our agency and our cities. With that,
Early motions.
we have a motion in 2 seconds. And we'll do a roll call vote.
City of Winters.
Aye.
County of Yolo.
Aye.
City of West Sacramento.
Aye.
City of Woodland.
Aye.
And City of Davis.
Aye.
And motion passes. Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Yay. That was good job all around. Right, you're returning to item 5. This is the update on transit MD transition. And it will be presented by All right. Stacy Romero.
Good evening, everyone, members of the board and everyone joining us this evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Daisy Romero, Director of Transit Operations, and I will be presenting today. For the record, just want to present. Before we begin, agenda item 5, I'd like to take a moment to introduce those who have been instrumental in supporting this transit operations transition. Joining us us this evening are representatives from our outgoing transit operations contractor, Transdev, which include Carmen Alba, the Senior Vice President of the Northwest Region, Denise Murphy, who's the Director of Operational Performance, and Terry Gillespie, who's the Interim General Manager. For our incoming contractor for MV Transportation, we have Peter Edwards online, who's the Regional Vice President of the Northern California region. We also have John Davis, who's the General Manager. Wes Cruz, Director of Special Operations, Jamie Flynn, Regional Recruiting Director, Ben Vivas, Director of Maintenance, and last but not least, Jesus Cervantes, who's the Transformation Program Director. So we got full house. We also like to thank our labor partners at ATU 256. We appreciate everyone's attendance and more importantly, the collaboration and professionalism that has been demonstrated throughout this transition process. I would also like to take a moment and acknowledge an important milestone for the Yolo Transportation District and our transit services. For the past 20 years, the YoloTD has partnered with Transdev to provide public transportation services throughout our community. We want to recognize and thank Transdev and the many employees who have dedicated themselves to serving our riders over the past 2 decades. Their commitment has always played an important role in helping YoloTD deliver essential transportation services to our region. As we transition to our new operating partner, we recognize that this change comes during a particularly challenging time for the transit industry. Like transit agencies across the country, we continue to experience a shortage of qualified bus operators. Recruiting, hiring, and training new drivers takes time, and ensuring they are properly trained is essential to maintaining the safety of our passengers, employees, and the public. Training has presented its own challenges as well, because our existing fleet is older, as we're finding out today, during our fleet inspection. New operators must train using these same buses that are providing daily service. As these vehicles require more frequent maintenance and replacement parts, can take longer to obtain. Balancing training needs while maintaining service has required careful coordination by everyone involved. We also recognize that this transition has required both contractors to temporarily share space within our operating facility. While we do not have excess office space available, we appreciate the professionalism, flexibility, and cooperation demonstrated by both Transdev and MV as they have worked together under these circumstances. Transitions of this magnitude are complex, and we are grateful for everyone's commitment to making this process as smooth as possible. Most importantly, we understand the frustration that missed trips and service disruptions have caused our riders. Reliable public transportation is essential to the people who depend on it every day, and we remain committed to restoring the level of service our community expects and deserves. Throughout this transition, YoloTD has remained committed to being transparent with our riders and the public. We have provided regular updates through our website, social media channels, rider alerts, and public meetings to ensure our community is informed about service impacts, transition activities, and the progress being made. We believe open communication is an important part of maintaining the public's trust, especially during periods of change. We also want to thank both our outgoing operator Transdev and our incoming operator MV Transportation for their dedication and collaboration throughout this transition. Their shared focus on maintaining service while preparing for a successful transfer of operations has been critical. As we move forward, our priorities remain clear, which is retaining and training a strong workforce, improving service reliability, supporting our employees, and ensuring a successful transition with as little disruption to our riders as possible. We will continue to monitor our progress, communicate openly with the public, and work collaboratively with all of our partners to address challenges as they arise. We appreciate the continued patience of our riders, the dedication of our employees, and the support of this board as we work together to build a stronger, more reliant transit system for the communities we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, I think we want to invite our partners to come and present. And I don't know if we have a dance card. Who's going to be sharing first?
Do not.
Okay.
Wants to invite.
I would like to invite Carmen Alba from Transdev to give a few remarks, and then we'll invite the MB team up. Thanks, Carmen.
Welcome, Ms. Alba. Hi there. Good evening, Chair Lauren, members of the board. It's good to be here today. I think that we've already been introduced. Let's see here. Just wanted to provide some context tonight. I was asked to provide information on our service reliability, more specifically, our recent service disruptions. Missed trips is not something that you would typically see at TransDev, and here with this transition, there's been quite a bit in the last couple of months. There's several reasons for the recent service transitions. One of them is the use of accrued sick leave. Here it's use it or lose it, basically. In the last couple of months, employees have been using that. Also, we've had a few operators that resigned. You see some of that during some of these transitions. And then finally, there's been a high absenteeism even after the use of sick leave. Now, what are we doing about it? Before I talk about what we're doing about it, I just want to give a little bit more context. So of the 72 operators that we have that are active today, 50 operators, now these numbers were last week, 50 operators have 4 sick leave hours or less. So they have been using them. It's our hope that people start coming back to work, the operators start coming back to work since they've used some of that sick leave. What are we doing about it? We're exploring attendance incentives. We've discussed some of these incentives with our partners, with our client, YTD. We've also presented some ideas to the incoming contractor, and we're hoping to follow up on that today. The goal there is to incent drivers to come to work. And so hopefully we'll see some positive results from that, because it is important to us that we ensure that their service reliability continues like it's been the last couple of decades. Finally, I'd like to thank the Yolo County Yolo YTD, sorry, many decades of saying the other acronym for their many years of partnership. 2 decades is a long time. Thank you very much for your trust over the years, and thank you to the board, and thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so very much. Who is next on my dance card? From me. Yeah, I don't have a list, so.
I know, why don't we go to Peter Edwards?
All right, thank you.
Hey, yeah, I just raised my hand. Hopefully you saw that.
No, I see it now.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Board Chair Lauren and board members. Thanks for the opportunity to provide just a brief update of the transition process and for MV Transportation to operate YoloTD services. Our focus, has been to retain, qualified incumbent employees, minimizing the disruption and just being fully prepared for a safe and a successful launch on August 1st. To date, we've qualified 59 of the 62 eligible incumbent operators, 28 staff members, including mechanics, dispatchers, and customer service reps. So, during the last board meeting, June 8th, there were some issues that were raised, one of which was the Second Chance program. This program is unique to YoloTD, so we had to complete a detailed review with our risk and legal teams. Glad to report that we've completed that review, and we've been able to hire all of those employees that were actively participating in that program. And they've been hired by the MV and have been notified of that. So good news there. Employees were also seeking clear information about paid time off, previously approved vacation days and sick leave. They want to understand how the previously approved vacations will be handled by MV. So I want everyone to understand we're actively reviewing those past time off requests with the intention of honoring those requests whenever it's feasible from an operational standpoint. But it really is important to clarify that the responsibility for accrued sick leave balances and PTO, lies with the current employer. However, employees will not see a reduction in sick leave eligibility once they transition to MV. I also want to briefly address discussions that we've been having with ATU, Local 5256, to finalize a transition agreement that addresses continuity and stability of our employees toward the transition. We're close to finalizing that agreement, so hopefully by the end of this week, we should have that in place. And finally, we heard the need for stronger communication in that June 8th meeting. And in response to that, we've expanded our outreach and distributed a detailed FAQ, provided direct support contacts, and scheduled a town hall so employees could hear directly from our startup leadership staff. And in closing, I really want to reiterate, what our top priority is to retain all qualified employees. And we're working really hard collaboratively with YoloTD staff and TransDev to ensure a smooth transition. Ultimately, our goal is providing safe, reliable service to Yolo County and the community. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you so very much. Are there dancers on the card? This isn't a voting item, but it would be nice to hear from the public. So we're going to go ahead and open up the public comment period and ask that. Would you like? Okay. All right.
Alex Benavides. I look forward to seeing some positive results in preventing further service interruptions from both contractors. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Hello, Michael Barnbaum, again, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento, and State University. Been following this item very closely. It's come up on my own social news feed, and I know at least one, if not more, local area media outlets have aired a story about this. My mobile phone rang off the hook when that went viral on television. Not so much on social media, but I received a lot of calls. But I think what's the good testament to someone like myself here at the table, along with the University of California and the California State Transportation Agency and California Department of Transportation, is that we're here because of our expertise in transportation industry. And I was able to address every phone call I got in a professional and expertise type of manner to ensure every caller that called me that the matters being handled by people with transportation expertise in the field with many years, and the matter is going to be addressed professionally and calmly. And I think that is what you are seeing as a testament tonight. We had a tough item. There was an elimination of a position and even consulting services. I don't know about my colleagues from CalSTA and Caltrans or the University of California, but I know I will be willing to step up during these tough times and provide my expertise to the district at no cost to help this district thrive into the future. And I think that what you heard tonight on this item is a testament that things are being addressed and the transition is happening as smoothly as it possibly can. And I hope that when I'm at Dodger Stadium on August 1st against the Dead Sox, that this will be something I'll look back in Woodland and I know will go as smoothly as possible.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. We have a lot of people here. Any other comments on this item before asking the directors if they'd like to make a comment? There's one online. Oh, comment. Okay, I don't see the hand up, but let's call them up. Welcome person online. Hi Kathleen, you have 3 minutes.
Hello. This is Kathleen. Is it okay if I start speaking?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 things. One, it was brought to my attention that the bus service from Woodland does not stop directly at the Amtrak station in Davis. It's like 5 blocks away, and that's not very helpful to seniors and others with maybe a disability. So I'd like the board to check into that and see, am I getting correct information or is that incorrect? And if indeed the bus does not stop at the Amtrak station, could someone make that happen?
Thank you, Kathleen.
And secondly, the other item was, let me see here if I have that. Well, can't access it. Sorry. Well, thirdly, I made a comment about something I heard at the meeting about incentivizing transportation drivers. And in my school district, we had an incentivizing plan for students for attendance. And we had a deal where they would get a reward monthly for their attendance. And then also those that had very good attendance, at the end of the school year, they'd be put into a lottery and they would win a car. So I don't know, it kind of goes with transportation to win a car, but I'm sure that's a very idealistic kind of thing. But I think you could check with school districts on how to incentivize attendance because school districts do that on a regular basis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. If there are no other comments, go ahead and ask the directors, and I believe Dr. Early has a comment.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate getting an opportunity to have this discussion. I think our last meeting, we were surprised to hear about some of the transitional challenges that were happening. And so again, appreciate MB's memo here and an opportunity to get to ask some questions. I want to better understand sick leave because that was what we heard. We heard 2 things. One was on sick leave and another was on the second chance program. I'm going to come back to the second chance program, but on sick leave, can I better understand what it means to do your best to honor the sick leave? How is that going to work? Peter, are you answering this or is someone in the room?
I can answer that. You had mentioned what does it mean to we'll do our best in the second chance program?
Yeah, no.
Is that
The sick leave. So you say something along the lines of while MB does not control those balances, we remain willing to work collaboratively with all parties to reach a mutually agreeable solution to transfer the sick balances from the incumbent employer. In parentheses, you said and associated funding. This is great. You could be a politician, by the way, whoever wrote this. What does it mean?
It means that the balances are the responsibility of the current employer. But we understand that they're having some challenges having people come to work because, as Carmen had mentioned, it's a use it or lose it sick leave, which is very different than PTO. And we haven't had that conversation with TransDev, and I had mentioned this on the call. Industry standard, when you do, we're doing a startup, they're doing a close down. Those are the things that you have funding for to make sure that things are transitioned correctly and that you incentivize people to come to work so that they don't lose those benefits that they have.
Peter, apologies, you broke up ever so slightly on the beginning of that. So what does that look like? Because I asked, because what we heard at the last meeting from our drivers were some serious concerns about the sick leave that had been accrued with their current employer not transferring at all to you all, right, to MV, and basically them starting over from zero. And so I would love just to better understand, is there a world in which they don't have to start from zero, even if it's, you don't take all, let's say they have 80 accrued hours, you take, 10, 20, like what does that look like? Or are they all starting from zero?
We haven't, we haven't, yeah. Traditionally, they do start from zero. It's kind of, if you move from a job, you don't take your sick leave with you to another job. And that's
Totally
essentially what
agree.
this.
This is a different situation, but yes, if I were to go, say, from the state to nonprofit, that's what happened to me, y'all. I didn't get to take any of my 1,000 hours with me, yes, but this was slightly different, right? Which is, you have drivers who have worked for YTD, in essence. I know that they are not working directly for us, and then transitioning to a new operator, but still sort of the umbrella employer is, for all intents and purposes, YTD. Are you negotiating with TransDev or no? What?
Yeah, we haven't negotiated along those lines. No, we have not. And like I said, there's funding for that from a contractor's perspective that should be able to be taken care of by the current employer. Asking the incoming contractor to bear some of that is not necessarily something that we've ever done before.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand. At what point is that conversation going to happen? You said the negotiation between you and TransDev. I'm just wondering when will that take place?
Oh, I guess we can try to schedule something this week to take a look at that. But as I said, that's not something that we've ever done before. So this is new territory for myself and our company to entertain something like that.
I am an employer. I completely understand. It definitely is an unusual situation. I would ask that you and TransDev try to figure that out if possible. I know that, at least I'll speak for myself and not my colleagues, that we are very interested in making sure that drivers that we have had work for us for 20 years plus don't completely have to start over with some of this time. I also understand, again, as I said, I was not exaggerating, I had like 1,000 sick leave hours, right? That you may not want to take something like that on. But if there's a world in which there is a baseline, as you said, sick leave is very different than PTO, that a conversation could happen around that.
Yeah, but sick leave is something in California, as you know, they get a bank every anniversary. So it's not going to be 1,000 hours. Some of the employees probably don't have that much, but and that bank, depending on the employee's anniversary, gets refilled on their anniversary. So that's an unknown to us. We don't have that information or that total of hours that's in that bank. And we're proposing higher wages as well. So even if we were to come to an agreement,
a one-to-one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I get it. And also, I was using again, the way that we used to do it in California is maybe slightly different than the way we do it now. Hence the hours I had. I wasn't suggesting you take on, right, those hours. I'm using it as an example that you wouldn't want to, I get as an employer, to take that on. What you're also hearing me ask, is there a world in which you can find a middle ground? And I know that's going to require a conversation with TransDev, and that's the only thing you hear me asking actively. Can you schedule this conversation and figure out if there is some sort of compromise that makes sense also for you all financially? I get it, you're a business and we don't want you to take an L either. So that's
certainly.
Yes, and I'll leave that there on that, just for time's sake. My second question was on your second chance program. I appreciate, as someone who formerly worked for CDCR, rehabilitation, I believe in second chances. It is one of my core values. And so I'm happy that you all are taking that on as well. I know that's unique to us. I think what I don't see here, and I just want to confirm, you will be taking on our incumbents as long as they meet all your qualifications for MV. Will you also be continuing our second chance program though?
Yeah, we haven't made that decision yet because we don't have the appropriate information, the background of how the program works. And we're working currently with YoloTD to get that information so we can make that decision.
Yeah, so my only ask then, and I know Chair Lauren, I was just saying, and I'm not gonna speak for my colleague here, but I feel him also saying like, yes, we want this. Once you all have that discussion, we do want that to come back to us sooner rather than later. I don't want to see it in 6 months. Well, I won't see it in 6 months because I won't be here. But I would love for that to come back in the next, what, month?
September 14th is our next meeting.
September 14th. All right.
September 14th, unless we have a meeting in August.
Okay, it would be great to have it come back in September, and hopefully that would be enough time to work with staff for you all to figure out how, because I know you will, figure out how you can adopt that program into your system as well. And maybe, who knows, based on this pilot with us, you then start to roll it out in other jurisdictions. I would love that for you and also the community that needs it, which is usually disenfranchised community members. I will tell you.
I would love to be able to do that, and that's from a sincere part of my background as well. Understanding that I've seen people where we've hired prior to the qualifications we have now, where they came in and had a checkered past, but ended up being our most valuable employees. So I do have history with that, and I would love to see if we can carry this program on. We have to dot our I's and cross our T's from a legal and risk standpoint. And as we're able to do that, we'll be more than happy to bring that on if we can make it happen.
Peter, I will tell you, I believe in you, and I have seen it across this country and in California, and so I trust that you can make it happen, sir. With that,
absolutely.
The floor. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Burks?
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, first of all, I appreciate the comments by Director Early. A couple of things. I think, first and foremost, we were caught off guard. I mean, as a board, safe to say, universally across the board, sort of in terms of how the transition is going. I think anytime that employees show up to any of our agency board meetings, we take that issue very seriously. And so just want to thank employees who were here last month, and some who are here this month, but for showing up and commenting and communicating these issues to us. I mean, no question, change is often hard. We know that. I mean, and then of course, going from one, organization to another, I think, really appreciate the work being done to ensure a smooth transition. The memo from MB, I think, is a very good update, and also appreciate the verbal update this evening from TransDev. I think Director Early touched on all of the sick leave items in particular, and really, I think there was a good discussion there. I want to just focus quickly on the second chance program as well, add my voice to the need, I think, for it to continue if it's seems reasonable through MV, but I did want to ask, I think it's Julie's there from Hanson Bridget online. I think, in the MV memo, it says, obviously, and Dante, you touched on this a little bit, just, you want a little bit more of assurances that it's going to continue. And, it's kind of just, we will evaluate opportunities to support it beyond the current incumbent workforce. I also think that it's something that could be a real selling point for MV as well. I think the question I have for Julie at Hanson Bridget, or Bridget Hanson, I don't know what the name of their firm is just around I think what the program thus far has been just kind of an agreement, it's not really, there's not a detailed on paper, outline, we'll say, or contract of, what the program really consists of. That's probably also what is in part driving MV's, just additional concern and or due diligence on it. I just, I think the question I have for Julie is just around, and thanks for participating today as well. What would be needed potentially? I mean, is it a good idea to have, a somewhat more like memorialized program? I mean, would seem to make sense, certainly, but just wanting to check in with legal folks about, even as it currently is stands as that program. It seems like it's working, it seems like it's successful, but it's not really, doesn't exist anywhere. It's not sort of memorialized. So just curious about, your thoughts, especially as an attorney, as to, what we should be doing or could be doing to make it, I'll say more official. So thanks very much for your consideration of that.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for inviting me again. Interesting conversation. I'm always a fan of having policies in writing and having them go through a public process and, have public comment, and that could also be from your third-party vendors as well, because as you're hearing from at least one of your vendors, they have some nervousness around liability issues. And so whenever you have a public process and that encourages the public and vendors to have input, and including the folks who could potentially participate in the program. And then you can talk about, liability issues, right? Who has the risk for, anything that could potentially come out of, utilizing folks that go through the program. I will say the MV contract does have an indemnity, scenario that's really favorable to MV. So I would expect that they could work through the risk issues. One thing, you want to keep in mind is joint employer liability issues. You don't really want to be in the position of telling MV, how to control their employees and what the terms and conditions are of employment, because that could be one factor a court could look at, for joint employer liability. But I think the way you're approaching it in this sort of collaborative process, getting the parties together to discuss and see what's possible and what everybody can be comfortable with, that seems to be the best way to approach it from my view. But I'm a big believer in having everything in writing and, socialized.
All right. Thank you very much, Julie. I really appreciate your perspective and your thoughts on this. Thank you. I do think that, well, just last quick comment. Yeah, I think appreciate hearing that. I sort of feel similarly that it is good to have not only things in writing, but also more formally have an opportunity for it to be turned into policy and with public input and due process and everything. So I do think that that's something we should be considering doing in a more formal way over the course of the next couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think I realized that. I always love your questions. I don't think I realized that the program was not memorialized in that way. And I think I would echo my colleague's recommendation for that. And what I would also say, again, working at CDCR and just doing equity work in general at the state level, is that anytime programs and policies are subjective, I think that's when actual inequities can enter. People don't really know where the lines are, not everyone has equal access to the information because it is very subjective. And so I would just encourage us to actually put the policy in writing so that everyone has access and understands and knows.
I just want to share, if I may,
Please.
a little bit about this. This Second Chance program is not our program. It is a program that was initially developed by Yolo County Health and Human Services. What we did is we essentially were a matchmaker between Yolo County Health and Human Services and TransDev. And they were looking for employers who would be interested in being engaged. And that program no longer, to my knowledge, no longer exists at the Health and Human Services Agency, but there is, the district attorney's office has kind of taken on some components of that. So I want to be clear that this is not our program. It's a program that existed and that we were approached. And we thought this seems like a win-win, could potentially be a win-win, and NMB went for it. But in part because of the concerns that Julie just identified in terms of joint employer status, not wanting to kind of inadvertently get in the position of dictating to our contractor what they should do and who they should hire, we chose not to kind of have anything more than just kind of a matchmaking, if you will, or introducing those two parties to each other and letting them take it from there. So that's kind of some of the history of why you don't see this as something that YoloTD has formally done. That said, I think having a more kind of just awareness of it and doing it in a way that is duly approved, is lawyer approved, so that we can have something that is more visible, I think is a great idea.
Thank you so very much. I'm learning so much about this process. Thank you. Director Chapman, do you have any comments?
No, nothing additional from me. Thank you.
All right, let's wrap this up. I think it's wonderful that this was brought forward, that we've had a healthy discussion. I echo the statements of my colleagues, and I appreciate the kind of framing of the history of it. I would like to see something memorialized, but I would just add for my own self that beginnings are fragile things, and it takes commitment to the long term to really get that fragile thing to grow. So let's just keep in mind that beginnings are fragile things and work hard. Those are my comments. All right, with that, we get to move to item number 7, and we're only 15 minutes behind, which is pretty cool. It's the short range transit plan network map phase 3 outreach and 80% service scenario assumptions. And it will be presented by Lola.
And while Lola is making her way up here and we're doing a set change, I'll just say, and by way of opening, so tonight we are asking for your approval of the network reconfiguration that's envisioned in our draft short range transit plan, AKA the map, where our services will go. We know there's still a lot of open questions about what is the appropriate level of service, what can we afford? But what we wanted to do is report back the outreach that we did on our reduced service scenarios, our phase 3 outreach, if you will, at your direction, show you what we've heard, and then ask for your approval of that map, which will not change in any of our service reduction scenarios. So whatever level of service we are operating at, we want it to be according to this network redesign that we have now, vetted with you and vetted with the communities. The decisions about the hours of service, the span of service, the frequency of service, those are all the decisions that are going to inform, but be informed by what we can afford, and what we do about our deficit. And those will be coming back to the board in future months. So that is really the purpose, if you will, tonight. We are looking to move the ball forward on the SRTP, even though we are not yet at the finish line in terms of determining what that final service level will look like. And with that, I will turn it over to Lola.
Thank you so much, Autumn, and thank you everyone for having me this evening. I am Lola Torney. I'm a senior planner here at YoloTD, and Autumn covered the agenda pretty well, so I'll try to move along quickly. So our staff recommendation this evening is fourfold. The first is to receive feedback heard from phase 2 of outreach that was conducted earlier this year. Also to approve the proposed network maps, to confirm the 80% scenario as the working assumption for SRTP implementation, but also to direct staff to continue refining service assumptions, as Autumn mentioned. I moved ahead too quickly. It has been a while since you've seen me, and so I want to sort of set the stage again and provide everyone the input to date that we've heard from you at past board meetings that will also set the stage for what I will be presenting on this evening. So back in April, you supported us converting from a coverage model to a frequency model of transit service. And in your discussion during that board meeting, you prioritized ridership. And per Human Transit book that you all have copied up, and I know you've already read, and also for those of us who went on the SACOG Minneapolis trip last month, we know that the best way to increase ridership is to increase frequency. And per Human Transit, the frequency means a minimum of 30-minute service, but better or more frequent service will lead to even more ridership. Internally, we have called this switching from coverage to a frequency model our North Star. Then in July, you showed support for our draft SRTP recommendations that we shared with the community last summer.
And then also consolidating overlapping routes in Woodland and West Sacramento. Then in September, you showed support for moving the Woodland transfer point from County Fair Mall to downtown. In November, you showed support for restoring fixed route service to Winters. And then in December, requested additional feedback from communities on the 80% service scenario, which we are also referring to as phase 3 of outreach. So first I'll start with the route network and service scenarios. So what you can see here, and it is absolutely zoomed out, but don't worry, I will be going through jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but this is what our proposed network map could look like. Additionally, on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what the service could look like. So our consultant has presented and put together 4 financial scenarios, 2 reduction scenarios that are 80 and 90% of the base case, which is the same miles and hours that we currently offer in our service, as well as 1 aspirational scenario, that meaning if any additional funding falls in the sky, we know exactly what to do with it and what to prioritize it and when. So I will now go through the and what service scenario we eventually will implement remains to be seen. I'll go into that a little bit. So now, next slide, I'll start going into the different routes and different jurisdictions. So first starting with Route 42. So we are proposing some service changes to Route 42, network changes, excuse me, for Route 42. Next slide. So all of the existing routes are shown in all of the maps moving forward as dashed lines. And then all the proposed are in solid lines. And so in Davis, we are proposing to shift a little bit off of 113 early in order to serve Sutter Davis Hospital. In downtown Sacramento, we are proposing to enter downtown farther north, which would allow us to serve the rail yards neighborhood and the new May Lee State Office Complex, as well as the Kaiser Hospital once construction is concluded on that. And that also allows us to reduce the number of detours that we currently have to take, which are the result often of events at Golden One Center or elsewhere in downtown, like farmers markets. Next slide is the proposed changes in Woodland. This is again based off of us shifting our service out of the County Fair Mall and being able to access downtown now. So this is what proposed routes could look like there. Then for West Sacramento, so here are all of our existing routes, again, in dash with the Causeway connection. In solid, we're not proposing any changes to the Causeway connection, Route 138. So that is why it is shown as solid here, and want to clarify that. And so what we are proposing for West Sacramento, next slide, is to consolidate 3 of those routes into a new route, Route 36, that would connect northwest Sacramento down to Southport, while still being able to serve the Bright Broderick neighborhood. And then for next slide, Route 37, some small changes to the existing network for Route 37, as well as being able to, during peak times, access into downtown Sacramento, which we will be referring to that route as Route 37 DT for downtown. So the next slide shows the full proposed West Sacramento network, and that includes the Route 42 and 138 also in that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What we had on the other ones, I just want to make sure I'm keeping up, was we saw dash on the proposed. Am I supposed to maybe compare the West Sacramento existing? I'm trying to follow the changes that were for 37.
37.
On all of them, it shows me proposed, but I'm just not seeing what it was before. Am I supposed to go back to the existing one and then kind of put them together?
Yes, and it's in your staff report in the attachment as well. If you want to more zoomed in, probably might be easier to see as well. I know.
Oh, you got me used to dash versus proposed on the other one, so that's
right. We didn't. The map got very busy when we started putting all of them together for West Sacramento, which is why we split it into the existing and proposed here.
Okay.
If you want, I can make that for you and send that separately.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So that is what the proposed network for West Sacramento could look like. The route itself, but there were two there was one scenario shared with the community in our last summer, which was phase 2 of outreach, which was the 100% scenario. And then the 80% scenario was shared earlier this year in phase 3. So the the tables here show the span of service, which are the hours that the service would be operating, as well as the potential frequency for each of the routes in West Sacramento. Then for Woodland, similarly, all of the routes on this slide are the existing and shown in dashed lines. And then for Woodland, we are proposing to consolidate route 211 and 212 into one new route, Route 213. This would be a bi-directional loop. And so this would actually works very similar to how the 42 currently runs. So if you're traveling on the 213 in Woodland and you're going in the clockwise direction, you would be on the 213A. And then if you're in the counterclockwise direction, you would be on 213B. And we can share more of this information with you when the schedules are starting to be developed as well. And for our Cache Creek route, Route 215, there are some small proposed changes to the routing. And that's shown down in the Woodland area because of us no longer having the 215 go into the County Fair Mall, but it would still serve the County Fair Mall. We're going to have it loop around and on Gibson and then loop up and then go back onto Matmore. And so that's where the small change to 215 is being proposed here. And so the next slide combines all of those proposed routes. And then similarly too, for Woodland, we put together the 100% and 80% scenario options for Woodland. For Woodland though, we do have two different options. So we would have, what we presented in the 100% scenario was 30-minute service for the 213 all day on weekdays, and then reducing the B-line vehicles to 2 vans, and then also offering the 1 van that currently serves Knights Landing. It's not there all the time, and so we could have that van support Woodland service. For 80% scenarios, we have 2 options. One would be to continue having that 213 serve be offered for 30 minutes all day, but that would have to be reduced down to 1 van plus the support from the Knights Landing van when available. Or option B would be to reduce the 213 service to only be 30 minutes in peak time periods, which would allow for 2 vans to be able to serve Woodland plus the additional Knights Landing van when available. So we're still working with staff on that. So just letting you know, this is what there's some options for Woodland. Next slide is for winters. So we haven't offered fixed route service, the 220 in a while. So if you want to see what the route map looked like for 220, it is in your staff report in the attachment, but here we just wanted to share it is still proposed to serve between Davis, Winters, and then down to Vacaville. And then next slide showing, again, similar scenario options for Winters, where in the 100% scenario, we were proposing to have 4 full round trips of Route 220 on weekdays with 1 B-line vehicle. But with an 80% option, we would have, we're presenting 2 options. One is 3 full round trips on weekdays for Route 220 with no B-line service, or could also offer 2 full round trips of Route 220 and also 2 full round trips of Route 220C, which is the sort of express route that would run between Davis and Winters. And so here's just to show I apologize, the slide says Davis existing, this is Davis. Proposed routes, just consolidating all of those together. And then next slide is showing what we're presenting to the public for 100% and then 80% scenarios, which would mean express route service would be discontinued for the Davis routes between Davis and downtown Sacramento. So by approving the staff recommendation tonight, you allow us to use the 80% scenario as the main assumption moving forward, but directing us to continue working to refine what level of service will actually be. As you saw, we still need to work with your city staff to decide the level and types of service you want to prioritize for your community. Approving the 80% scenario as an assumption does not tie you to that, but provides a starting point for those conversations. I want to make sure we're very clear on that. So our staff recommendation is to approve the 80% funding scenario as the baseline assumption for SRTP implementation, but exact service levels and the exact span, those types of things are remaining under development. I also want to share with you some of what we've heard during phase 3 of outreach, which was earlier this year. We had several meetings with various entities. West Sacramento and Davis both have transportation commissions, so we presented to them in March of this year. We also, because Woodland and Winters don't have transportation commissions, we met with Woodland staff and Winters elected officials several times. And also noting, we did not speak with the Yolo County TAC because we already have very limited service in Yolo County and none of that is proposed to change. So that's why we didn't meet with them. So some of the feedback we received, there's more detailed information and a better summary, if you will, in your staff report, but just as a high level, what we heard from Davis, there were strong concerns about discontinuation of express routes. In Winters, they're optimistic about restoring Route 220, but are concerned with not having B-line. For Woodland, next slide, they are optimistic to see how ridership would increase over time. And West Sacramento, we heard to prioritize River City High School service and to better market about how Yolo Bus is free for students. And so for next steps for short range transit plan, we still need to develop a full implementation plan, including route schedules, but we're also currently developing, our consultant is developing bus stop standards and guidelines, key performance indicators, and updating our fare policy. Those 3 items will come back to you in October for direction. And then we'll also be developing new bus stop signs and route maps, the outreach plan, and then we will roll out the short range transit plan, unintended. So again, our staff recommendation is to receive feedback heard from phase 3, approve the proposed network maps, to confirm the 80% scenario as the assumed financial scenario for implementation, but also direct us to continue refining service assumptions. So with that, I will take any questions. And take a drink of water. I threw a lot at you there.
Yeah, everybody have some water.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do we have discussion or would we like to do?
I have 2 questions, yeah, or comments, yeah. I mean, do you want to just do public comment first? I mean, or that, maybe that's easier.
All right, let's open it up for public comment.
Okay.
I see Mr. Eden. Hello.
Thank you, Michael Barnbaum again. So this is, I think, where my specialty and expertise can come in quite handily. So first, I do want to comment about the maps in Sacramento and West Sacramento. After speaking to staff at the Disability Advisory Commission, which I'm a commissioner of, the engineer took a look at the maps and said, if there's anything that can be done to reduce the need for detours, they're all in and all in favor of that. And it looks like the work has been done. The public comment has been received from past callers and commenters at meetings here about the Maylee State Building. And it looks like that the 42 and I believe the 45 Express are going to have similar route patterns for that. And we are very good with moving that forward starting in July of 2027. We recognize there will be another year of detours, and I'll sadly present in September what the event schedule will look like too, so everyone from October to April in particular will be prepared for when to detour. The route maps in West Sacramento, great to see service to River City High School. But if you remember last month, there was a handout potentially of a rail alignment coming to downtown West Sacramento around the Civic Center and the satellite campus of Sacramento City College. So if that were to happen in 2029, 2030 fiscal year, would it be prudent in the budget to continue 37 DT? Or by then, would it be redundant service? And then should 37 DT be given another look and perhaps be considered for elimination, with the only route operating then being the 36 and the regular 37? In Davis, to the caller who commented earlier, is there a way to modify any map, particularly between Woodland and Davis, to provide that intercity rail connection directly with Yolo bus? I want to make sure I answered what the caller said as providing public service. And lastly, on 213 A and B, would the starting point of the route be the community college? Because I know we can't start a route at a transfer point. But I did see 42 would likely start at the MU in Davis, and that was highly recommended by myself at a previous meeting instead of the airport due to TSA safety regulations. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
Staff would like to comment on any of them.
I will note that we haven't yet determined where the 213 would start. That'll be up to our consultant when they start the scheduling, but Woodland Community College is a great suggestion. I'll check with them. They're actually listening, so they heard you. And I believe your question about the 37 and 37 DT is a good one. We'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. The short range transit plan is a working document and can always be changed.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on the short range transit? All right, we're gonna bring it back to the directors. Yeah, Director Dilsha.
Yeah, thank you. Mine's pretty short. On the maps, the 138 is shown, but then it's kind of detailed in the West Sacramento section, but it doesn't stop at all in West Sacramento. So, but it might not make a difference because these are the presentation maps, not the actual route. So, and then, but there's not a service description for the 138. Which might be the same thing, the 80% and the 100% don't need to be detailed. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Great point and great question. We are not proposing any changes right now to the Route 138 causeway connection. So it's merely there as I show that it travels through the city, but no, there's no changes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation. A couple items. I think so. I'll just go straight to the staff recommendation for a second. So, I mean, I'm not ready to approve the proposed network maps. I mean, I guess that maybe at a high level I would, but I mean, they're just literally the first time I'm seeing them right now. So, I mean, like really in depth, right? Full presentations from staff on it. So that's something that I think like just, not quite there yet. I mean, one of our board members isn't even here to vote on, their proposed maps, we'll say. So I just, that's the other issue I was thinking is I mean, you can't always guarantee there's gonna be a full attendance of the entire board, but it's more of a challenge to sort of say, yeah, we should definitely approve those potential cuts in Woodland without the Woodland folks here as an example. So just, that's one item. I think I think we're probably gonna have to go into the direction of the 80% scenario, in terms of financial, for the SRTP implementation. I obviously, I do see though that one of your next steps is, you know, in kind of the conducting financial analysis and coordination with the 26-27 budget. I think we just have to figure out, it's kind of a, you know, what the right sizing, how it affects the budget, and, you know, what, I mean, we can't offer, you know, 100% if the budget doesn't add up to that, and then the same is true for this, you know, 80% or 90%. So I think just would have to know exactly what the dollars and cents are, unfortunately, as well. That is part of this decision. As it relates to the appreciate all the outreach that's been done with all, and seeing all the feedback from folks all across the county. I think, you know, one of the items that we've talked about a number of times, and you referenced earlier in your presentation, was around just actual ridership, in terms of what routes are, you know, the most well-written, for example, or have the highest ridership. That is going to help me make my decision on any kind of potential changes. I think I'll just say, you know, for example, if the commuter routes, the express routes are really highly written and well written, like, why would I vote to cut those routes if we're gonna just also send a bus and, you know, it's a fixed route somewhere else that just goes around and around and doesn't have very many riders. So I understand there's a balance there to be had, I think, between the service of any of our communities, but also routes that are well written. And then there's also that, I think, balance to be had as it relates to, and this is why we've been having the discussions about the resurrection of the Route 220. I mean, there were parts of, you know, in particular winters, one community in our county, one incorporated city, that hadn't been served, of course, since the pandemic. And so, I mean, Beeline, yes, but in terms of fixed route, no. And so that's, you know, there is this balance to be had. So I think that's just, I'm glad to see that we're having those discussions. I think that, I mean, I think Woodland has talked about this over time. And then so again, not here tonight, so I can't know exactly, but, you know, they talked about not having any fixed route service and just having Beeline, for example. So I think that's a scenario that we should actually, let's see if that's something they're interested in. And if they just want only Beeline and they want 4 Beeline vehicles instead of, you know, fixed routes or whatever, I mean, I think those are the types of questions that I have that I don't know the answers to. So that's why I would say at this point, I'm not ready to sort of go in the direction of like, yes, approve the proposed network maps, because I think that there's a few examples like that, including, you know, does one community just want more Beeline service and not as much fixed route service, for example? So those are just a few of the questions that and thoughts that I have as relates to this item. Thank you for your work on it. Appreciate it.
Okay, yeah.
Awesome. So I also am not quite ready to adopt these maps, network maps yet today either. But really appreciate the work. I have a couple of questions I want to start with. So this has been seen by the TAC, right? Giving some general nods, yes. And have they provided feedback, and have we incorporated all their feedback, or how has that worked out?
Yes, the TAC saw previous iterations of the network maps, which helped inform the maps that you see this evening.
Okay, that's helpful. When we're not able to incorporate their feedback, how do we respond back? And I'm specifically talking about sort of like West Sac staff, for instance, because I know, at least from their perspective, not all of their feedback has been incorporated. And so what is the communication on that?
I'll need to go back and check and see specifics, but I will say your staff has been incredible and very good at, you know, when we have questions. We also have regular coordination meetings with all of our member agencies, and the short range transit plan is an item that comes up often. And so those types of conversations happen at least twice a month.
I think that's great. I think that when something that I want to share and bring up here, because it definitely was an aha moment for me, was in talking to my staff about the short range transit plan. I said, okay, so did you guys approve it? Like, what? Right? And, you know, my staff, pushed back a little bit and I appreciated that. And what they said was, we provide technical expertise. We do not approve anything, right? And so whether we agree, don't agree, that's really, from their perspective, what they are offering, is their technical skills. And the reason why I flag that is because I think there potentially, at least definitely my own brain, has been some misalignment of when we would say things like, hey, and it came before the TAC, and that, right, and they're good with it. That doesn't, at least for my staff, I won't speak for everyone else's staff, but for my staff, that doesn't mean they're good with it. It means they've provided their technical expertise. And the reason why I think that's important to note, is because one of the things I asked when you came before, at least West Sacramento City Council, right? And we said, you know, hey, we're gonna present to you business as usual, right? Like if we keep things sort of like status quo, this is what you'll get. And what I said to you back then was, but we know it's not gonna be status quo. I appreciate you, but you know this is it. And so what I asked was, hey, can you please come back when you're ready to present on what potentially increased services might be, or more solidified of what are the changes that would likely need to be proposed, so that the council can really provide feedback, because those who would sort of like approve or be more of the representative body for the policies in the community would be the city council, not the TAC. And I think that's an important difference to note, because I certainly, in my mind, even how I would talk to my staff, like, well, did you tell them that you didn't agree with this? It's like, no, we didn't. We just provided technical expertise. And so I think that's gonna be really important, that before we approve these, and this is something I've said before, that you have an opportunity to also take on the road to the city council, like this part now, because this isn't what we necessarily saw when you came back before us. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is that, like my colleague, I wish there was more data. I appreciate the maps, but I wish there was more ridership data. I also wish that I saw maybe some more of the financial data as well, in regards to, this is how much these routes cost per the riders, this is right. And I say that because one of the things that we've seen at SACOG recently is that costs are rising and we're not keeping up with those costs. And I think oftentimes, because we're not necessarily, it's not being put in front of us, we're not, therefore it's not something we're measuring or even factoring in, even though I know it's important to all of my colleagues. And I think part of that is because it's not coming in front of us often enough. And so I think that's something that we absolutely should be considering, in addition to ridership, just how much is this gonna cost us? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Chapman? Do you have any?
Sure, just
comments?
quickly. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair Lauren. And I would agree with my colleagues who spoke before me. I think one of the pieces for me that has come up, and I don't know how we do it because it's explained in the staff report, but the emails I received from folks in Davis were talking, they're tying just the approval of maps with what you heard was losing the express routes, right? So like all the groundswell of folks who were emailing me about tonight weren't even talking about the change of the map by moving off 113 and connecting to Sutter. It was all about, you're going to cut service in Davis. So I don't know how we do a better job with that. I'm not saying we didn't do a good job, but clearly it's getting out. And I think the approval of the maps is kind of being muddied with, they're going to cut service all over the place. So I think if we can find a way, like Director Early said and Director Farrick said, and I don't know what that looks like, to kind of bring this back with data, more data, if you will, so that we have those numbers. I think it would be helpful for me to at least then return to constituents and have the conversation around what this conversation tonight actually is about, and that it's not about whether or not we're removing service. And I heard you say that in the very beginning, Lola, around like, that's not the decision we're making here tonight, but oftentimes that's what people grab onto. So I think having it come back with what my colleagues have said, and finding a way to push the message out there more, that's not what we're doing around these maps, would be an important thing for us to do. And thank you for your work on this.
Thank you very much. We have a whole network of ideas on this. First, I just want to make a couple comments about winters that, when we came back from the pandemic, we had really limited hours with one bus. It said, like, was it 8 to 4? And with the distance between Woodland, Winters, and Vacaville, that meant that whatever we collected as data wasn't what people wanted. It was, how many miles versus riders. So that data isn't very useful to us. And then we increased to 7 a.m., 7 p.m. and have two buses, one not as many hours as the other. Our ridership increased greatly. With that, we're gonna make another change. And I think that fixed route is a great idea in winters. But it seems like it's hard to make a decision on data when the data is all short and with different variables that are changing also. So how do you compare them? So I think that data is going to be really important. And also the data, not just of ridership, but of missed ridership for something like microtransit, where how many calls are made that are dropped because it's not available. I mean, those count too when it comes to microtransit. And I guess I have a weird process question. If a jurisdiction or people in the jurisdiction felt like there was an unmet transit need, what part of the process of determining how to apply for the unmet transit need does YTD can YTD offer? Would you offer any help with the data in order to pursue unmet transit needs for an area, or is that a conflict?
I can speak to the unmet transit needs process question. Our role in that process is twofold, and it actually is defined in statute as sort of the transit agencies. We help collect public comment, so we can kind of funnel public comment and share it with SACOG. And then we also participate in basically there's a technical advisory committee that SACOG creates for Yolo County. And we help, we participate in that. We're also supposed to recommend people who can participate in that TAC, who have knowledge of Yolo County and what the needs are. So that's really the role that we have defined. And we do try to be very careful to not step outside of that role because it could look like we're advocating for our own self-interest.
I mean, this is like the non-chair, just human being comment. Had I known earlier how hard it would be to get the hours back, I would have thought for those hours much harder during the pandemic. But it feels like for my jurisdiction, they just got more, and now we're going to change it. And I do want to have that bus line that they can predict. I do. I think that's very important. But I think winners out of all the areas is like the kind of the weirdest, the most non-linear to consider. Yeah, and then what I believe I'm asking of the directors tonight, you've received feedback, but we would just be doing item 3 and 4, maybe confirming 80% scenario as assumed financial scenario for SRTP implementation and directing staff to continue refining service assumptions for the year 26-27 in preparation for the implementation in 27-28 and not item number 2 in the list. Do we have any other? Is that everybody's understanding? That we're not approving the proposed network maps at this time? Hello?
Go back and look at.
I don't think we're approving them, right? I mean, I didn't hear a majority wanting to approve them.
It's a challenge to approve them when at least one of the jurisdictions is not here. So to say yes or no. I mean,
Yeah, I'm just trying to be a good listener on this. We have our attorney online.
I think you would just, if there's a motion to simply approve 3 and 4, that would be the motion to approve those portions of staff recommendation. If there's not interest, or at least in the initial motion, to approve the network maps this evening.
I think the comments have been made, and I would ask that moving the number 3 and 4.
I'm happy to second it or if that's a motion, but I mean, are we gonna possibly get any answers to some of the questions we asked?
No, let's get some answers.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
we can have, I mean, I'm totally fine to have kind of, refine, direct staff to continue refining certain assumptions, but I mean, like, there was questions asked about ridership data, I mean, how, a bunch of things, so just curious about.
Yeah, I can touch on that one just a little bit. So the way this process has unfolded is that each presentation, each action that we've asked of the board has been sort of built on prior actions. So year and a half, 2 years ago, we collected a lot of data about our ridership. I did a lot of analysis about where people live, what the catchment areas of potential ridership could be. So all of that was done also in the interest of sort of trying to establish a prioritization for the services that we would ultimately propose, which was, sort of proposing today with the network map, which was the board decision to focus on, frequency over coverage. And so that's sort of the process that we've taken, and that's what sort of built the network map, right? So knowing that, for example, fixed route is a much more cost-effective and efficient way of transporting people and more reliable for the riders, that's why we were focusing on fixed route as opposed to an all micro transit service in Woodland, because we're gonna reach capacity very quickly. We're already at capacity. We feel like there's a mix, there's a blend that works. And we've done this in collaboration with the local agency staff along the way. I can't count how many conversations that we've had. And coming into this, I think we're surprised to hear that there isn't support for the network map that we presented, because we've had extensive conversations with them, even had sort of route building workshops with, for example, West Sacramento staff. And we've had extensive conversations with Woodland as well. So, we're not exactly sure why, but we can definitely track that down. But a lot of the data that's being asked for tonight was sort of the foundation for establishing the network and sort of the service levels that we're looking at today, for that action. So,
And what I would tell you is, I appreciate the fact that you all have been living in that data and that it was the foundation, but we have not, right? And so you presenting this like the final product without harkening back to, hey, so I'm gonna remind you of all this stuff, right, that has informed this. I appreciate wanting to have a short presentation. I appreciate wanting to be like as simple as possible. But these are really big changes for our community, and I think it's important that we have that, not to say that that's not work that you haven't already done, and so I don't want to give you that impression at all, but quite frankly, I don't remember all those numbers, right? I don't, and certainly every time these presentations have come before us, we definitely haven't had numbers the entire time. So that's what I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. I completely agree, that this is a lengthy process, and it's, harkening back to kind of where we've been. We always want to use your time well. At the same time, it's been quite a while since December. And I think, and for me, what I'm hearing is that, and then we kind of need to tie all the pieces back in, we need to weave all the threads back in, if you will. And also, I think I'm hearing that maybe there's a reluctance to kind of chop these into multiple decisions, and that really, you want to be making a decision about the network and about the service levels, maybe perhaps concurrently. So that you really have a full sense of like, what can we afford? Does this make sense given the resources that we have, as opposed to a kind of a more stepwise approach? I will say, I think this conversation is helpful tonight, even if we don't approve anything, in terms of just getting, understanding how you're reacting to this. And it's helpful to know that you've been hearing from members of the public as well. We haven't received any public comment on this, but you all apparently have, right? And so that's good for us to know. So this does move the ball forward for us. I think we were looking to kind of, to help us continue to move the ball. We would like to have some of these things locked in, but I think we can regroup and talk about how we move forward from here in a way that brings back in some of the data and the work that's come before, and also maybe bring in more of the budgetary financial pieces that we can kind of give you options that are financially tied to the deficit and bring that all back to you in the package.
I think that's the hard part, right? Because when we say like, hey, we want an 80% scenario as assumed financial scenario, and then I'm looking, I'm like, I don't see any financial numbers in here, right? I mean, so it's difficult to make that recommendation and quite frankly, to approve that without really having the full picture. And I also appreciate like, hey, there's a lot of information. We're trying to like sort of like piecemeal this so that you can eat this elephant, right? And so I as much as I appreciate that, because it's so piecemeal, it's hard to make all of the connections.
I really appreciate all the comments tonight. I just wanted to add that this was on our agenda last month. But we had, we had a closed session, we had other things, so we had to postpone this discussion. So now it's July and we have, dark in August. So I understand that there's an immediacy to, like, come on, let's talk about it. And you've been living it. And we did need that time to do closed session. So I just want to mention that we're also part of the rub on this. And then also I would like to add that there was tension about the budget and we had a lot of questions and the way it was packaged and anchored and explained really helped us tonight. And I would just hope that that kind of anchoring can be provided so that we don't have missing, the leaps are too big to take for our communities without that information. So what is the desire of the directors?
I think, as we've heard from my own, I think it would be good to bring this back, all of them back, especially hopefully, Woodland is normally here, so that so that they are fully represented, is what I would say. And we've given a lot of feedback and it sounds like the feedback has been hopefully helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you already had I think you do not have a motion out there on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, which is just these two items and not the maps, I mean, basically, so, I mean, it still gets us some, half a step in the direction that staff wants us to go, it's just, are not finalizing the sort of the proposed network maps, is that, I feel like that. Right.
So what I was originally proposing was to support items 3 and 4, and that would be a motion that I would make.
I think
because of because of not having the finances.
I just hate something about finances and not having them.
All right, no, I respect the board and I respect it.
Yeah.
Josh, or Director Chapman, did you have any comment you wanted to make on postponing or having this come back to us?
Yeah, I'm fine with that approach. That
Okay.
works for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your very hard work as senior planner and then bringing this to us and our communities. Great, thank you. With that, we're gonna move to item number 8, and that is administrative reports. Any discussions regarding subjects not particularly listed? Oh. Yeah, okay, we're moving to 8. So the first one is board members' verbal comments. Do we have board member verbal comments?
Went to SACOG's transportation study mission. And it was, I know you're gonna talk about it. No. And so I'm gonna actually pass the mic to you. It was really eye-opening and amazing. I can't say enough positive things. I posted a little bit about it on social media, but we were together, so you'll be good.
It was so great to go on the study mission and to see bus rapid transit and how fast, efficient, clean their processes. It was just really exciting to ride the transportation to events and to meet with the boards there and to find out about their financing and also the success of the communities, the success of being able to, just get on that bus rapid transit and get to work or go to a baseball game where it's right in front of the game. Like it was efficient and clean
And
and
safe.
integrated into everything in the community and safe. And, wow, it made me, think I should, move out of California, but, I don't like snow, so that's not gonna happen.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful though. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was also great to have, Lola, the attorney there to hear her, you know, how she's receiving things and judging things. It was great to have a little bit of staff and then a lot of the members from SACOG from different areas to kind of experience it together. So, and yeah, Director Chapman was there. It was great. But the comments I wanted to make, I wanted to also have special recognition to the staff celebrating milestones, Leticia Ambres, Christina Grajeda, Daniel Gomez, and Daisy Romero, all celebrating milestones with YTD. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Big props. And Director Chapman, do you?
No, nothing for me. Thank you.
All right, Executive Director, verbal report.
I have nothing to report this month. I've been doing all kinds of non-work related things, so I'm gonna, just cruise right on through.
Right, Abinat.
Now I'm off the hook this month.
You are, you are.
Congrats.
And you did an extraordinary job. It was a pleasure working with you on hard items behind the scenes. Sharon Stiff, do we have a report? All right,
We do not have a report.
okay, and then the long range is just to remind you that we don't have a meeting in August. Our next meeting is September 14th. And with that, if there are no other, all right, our meeting will be adjourned at 8:22. Thank you. See you in September.
Thank you, everyone.